Alright, we are coming up on 8 o'clock. So, let's settle in, get comfortable, and jump back in where we left off. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, we are returning to finish up what we had started last time. We were sort of filling out the time that we had left over with a new short story that was a little bit longer than anticipated. It happens. But we are returning to Peace on Earth, Goodwill to Dogs. This is a fun story so far. It's very reminiscent of an old-timey Disney movie, honestly. It's cute. There's just some innuendo layered on. There's over-concerned parents. There's the disasters of the holidays. Really, it's got a little bit of everything. And it's not really what I expected as I was pulling it up. It's funny how some of these older stories are every bit as relatable as something more modern, despite a lot of them missing modern trappings. Some things just are always and forever, and this is one of those. Something else that's always and forever is my carry-out order for tonight's dinner was an hour late. So, you will forgive me if I have to take periodic breaks to snatch a quick bite. It is what it happened. It is what it is. On the bright side, the pizza is very fresh. It only took a very, very long time. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive back in where we'd left off, which was at the turning of the parts. Okay, this is a part one, part two sort of story. So we left off, and our heroine, Flame, is set free to spend the Christmas with the dogs. Now, her parents don't know that it's the dogs. They think it is the lady that lives up the way. She's moved in for the holidays. And she didn't let on such that the lady is a purebred bulldog. It happens. Yeah, it's children, I guess children of 18 years old, will get up to these such antics. Alright, so let's see where this story will go next, with part 2 of Peace on Earth, Goodwill to Dogs. It's a dull person who doesn't wake up at Christmas morning with a curiously ticklish sense of tinsel in the pit of his stomach, a sort of a shine, a kind of a pain. Glisten and tears, pang of the years, that's Christmas. So much was born on Christmas Day. So much has died. So much is yet to come. Balsam-scented, with the pulse of bells, how the senses sing! Memories that wouldn't have batted an eye for all the Gabriel trumpets in eternity leaping to life at the sound of a twopenny horn. Merry folk who were with us once and are no more. Dream folk who have never been with us, yet, but will be sometime. Ache of old carols, zest of a new-fangled games. Flavor of puddings, shine of silver and glass. Pleasant frosty smell of the expressman. The gift beautiful, the gift dutiful, the gift that didn't come. Hey-ho! Manger and toy shop, miracle and mirth. Glisten and tears, laugh at the years. That's Christmas. Flame Nerisse certainly was willing to laugh at the years. 18 usually is. Waking at dawn, two single thoughts consumed her. The lay reader, and the humpiest of the express packages downstairs. The lay reader's name was Bertrand. Bertrand the lay reader, Flame always called him. The rest of the parish called him Mr. Lorello. It was the thought of Bertrand the lay reader that made Flame laugh the most. "As long as I've promised most faithfully not to see him," she laughed, "how can I possibly go to church? For the first Christmas in my life," she laughed, "I won't have to go to church." With this obligation so cheerfully cancelled, the exploration of the humpiest express package loomed definitely as the next task on the horizon. Hoping for a fur coat from her father, fearing for a set of encyclopedias from her mother, she tore back the wrappings with eager hands, only to find, all astonished and half scream, a gay, gauzy layer of animal masks nosing interrogatively up at her. Less practical, surely, than a fur coat, more amusing, certainly, than encyclopedias. The funny, false faces grinned up at her with a curiously excitative audacity. Where from? No identifying card. What for? No conceivable clue. Unless, perhaps, just on general principles, a donation for the Sunday school Christmas tree? But there wasn't going to be any tree. Tentatively, she reached into the box and touched the fiercely striped face of a tiger, the fantastically exaggerated beak of a red and green parrot. Mused Flame. Whatever in the world shall I do with them? Then, quite abruptly, she sank back on her heels and began to laugh and laugh and laugh. Even the lay reader had not received such a laughing. But, even to herself, she did not say just what she was laughing at. It was a time for deeds, it would seem, and not for words. Certainly, the morning was very full of deeds. There was, of course, a present from her mother to be opened. Warm, woolly stockings and things like that. But no one was ever swerved from an original purpose by trying on warm, woolly stockings. And from her father there was the most absurd little box, no bigger than your nose, marked, "For a week in New York," and stuffed to the brim with the sweetest, bright green dollar bills. But, of course, you couldn't try those on, and half the parish sent presents, but no parish ever sent presents that needed to be tried on. No gay, fluffy scarves, no lacy, frivolous pettiskirts, no bright delaying hat ribbons, but just books. Illustrated poems, usually. Very wholesome pickles. And always a huge motto to recommend. Peace on earth, goodwill to men. To men? Why not women? Why not at least to dogs? Questioned Flame quite abruptly. Taken all in all, it was not a Christmas morning of sentiment, but a Christmas morning of works. Kitchen works, mostly. Usually useful, flavorous adventures with a turkey. A somewhat nervous sally with an apple pie. Intermittently, of course. A few experiments with flour paste. A flare or two with a paintbrush. An errand to the attic. Interminable giggles. Surely, it was 4 o'clock before she was even ready to start for the Rattle-Pane house. And starting is by no means the same as arriving. Dragging a sled full of miscellaneous Christmas goods an eighth of a mile over bare ground is not an easy task. An eighth of a mile, really. That's, up the street and back. She had to make 3 tugging trips, and each start was delayed by her big, gray pussycat stealing out to try to follow her. And each arrival complicated by the yelpings and leapings and general cavortings of 4 dogs who didn't see any reason in the world why they shouldn't escape from their forced imprisonment in the shed yard and prance home with her. Even with the 3rd start and 3rd arrival finally accomplished, The crafty cat stood waiting for her on the steps of the Rattlepane house, back arched, fur bristled, spitting like some new kind of weathercock at the storm in the shed yard. It had to be thrust quite unceremoniously into a much too small covered basket, and lashed down with yards and yards of tinsel that was needed quite definitely for something else. It isn't just the way of the transgressor that's hard. Nobody's way is any too easy. The door key, though, was exactly where the old butler had said it would be, under the doormat, and the key itself turned astonishingly cordially in the old lock. Never in her whole life, having owned a door key to her own house, it seemed quite an adventure in itself to be walking thus possessively through an unfamiliar hall into an absolutely unknown kitchen, and goodness knew what on either side and beyond. Perfectly simply, too, as the old butler had promised, the 4 dog dishes, heaping to the brim, loomed in prim line upon the kitchen table, waiting for distribution. Sniffed Flame. Nothing but mush. Mush! All over the world today, I suppose, while their masters are feasting at other people's houses on puddings and cigarettes. How the poor darlings must suffer, locked in sheds, tied in yards, stuffed down cellar. Meow, twinged a plaintive hint from the hallway just outside. Oh, but cats are different, argued Flame. So soft, so plushy, so spineless. Cats were meant to be stuffed into things. All right, calm down. Without further parley, she doffed her red tam and sweater, donned a huge white all-enveloping pinafore, and started to ameliorate as best she could the Christmas sufferings of the poor darlings immediately at hand. It was at least a yellow kitchen, or had been once. In all that gray, dank, neglected house, the one suggestion of old sunshine. We shall have our dinner here, chuckled Flame. After the carols, we shall have our dinner here. Very boisterously, in the yard just outside the window, the 4 dogs scuffled and raced for sheer excitement and joy at this most unexpected advent of human companionship. Intermittently, from time to time, by the aid of old boxes or barrels, they clawed their way up the cobwebby windowsill to peer at the strange proceedings. Intermittently, from time to time, they fell back into the frozen yard in a chaos of fur and yelps. By 5 o'clock, certainly, the faded yellow kitchen must have looked very strange, even to a dog. Straight down to its dingy, wobbly-floored center stretched a long table cheerfully spread with the Reverend Mrs. Flamad Norris's second-best tablecloth. Quaint, high-backed chairs dragged in from the shadowy parlor circled the table. A pleasant china plate gleamed like a hand-painted moon before each chair. At one end of the table loomed a big brown turkey. At the other, the appropriate vegetables. Pies, cakes, and donuts interspersed themselves between. Green wreaths streaming with scarlet ribbons hung nonchalantly across every chair top. Tinsel garlands shone on the walls. In the doorway reared a hastily constructed mimicry of a railroad crossing sign. This is not described, but there is a picture, so one moment we will get this one pulled in. It's a very simple one, so it shouldn't take us too terribly long. Cat, you do not get pizza. I know you want some, but no. All right, here we are. We have the Christmas railroad crossing for to set out for the dogs. The Christmas crossing, look out for surprises, shop, cook. You can listen. Directly opposite, and conspicuously placed above the rusty stovepipe, stretched the parish's gift motto, duly readjusted. Peace on earth, goodwill to dogs. Virtuously silly, admitted Flame even to herself, but yet it does add something to the gaiety of rations. Stepping aside for a single thrilling moment to study the full effect of her handiwork, the first psychological puzzle of her life smote sharply across her senses. Namely, that you never really get the whole fun out of anything unless you are absolutely alone. But the very first instant you find yourself absolutely alone with a really good time, you begin to twist and turn and hunt about for somebody very special to share it with you. The only very special person that Flame could think of was Bertrand the lay reader. Oh. All ablush with the sheer mental surprise of it, she fled to the shed door to summon the dogs. Maybe even the dogs won't come, she reasoned, practically. Maybe nothing will come. Maybe that's always the way things happen when you get your own way about something else. Like a blast from the Arctic, the Christmas twilight swept in on her. It crisped her cheeks, crinkled her hair, turned her spine into a wisp of tinsel. All outdoors seemed suddenly creaking with frost, all indoors with unknownness. Come, beautiful lovely, she implored. Come, Lopsy, come, Flora. Come, Blunderblot. But there was really no need of entreaty. A turn of the doorknob would have brought them. Leaping, loping, four abreast, they came plunging like so many north winds to their party. Streak of snow, glow of fire, frozen mud, sunspot. Yelping mouths, slapping tailed, backs bristling, legs stiffening, wolfhound, setter, bulldog, Dalmatian, each according to his kind, hurtling, crowding. Oh, dear me, struggled Flame. Maybe a carol would call them. To a certain extent, the carol surely did. The haircloth parlor of the Rattlepane house would have calmed anything, and the mousy smell of the old piano fairly jerked the dogs to its senile old ivory keyboard. Cocking their ears to its quavering treble notes, snorting their nostrils through its gritty guttural basses, they watched Flame's facile fingers sweep from sound to sound. Oh, what a glorious lark! Quivered Flame. What a lonely, glorious lark! Timidly, at first, but with an increasing abandon, half laughter and half tears, the clear young soprano voice took up its playful paraphrase. God rest you merry animals, let nothing you dismay, caroled Flame, for... It was just at this moment that beautiful lovely the wolfhound, muzzle lifted, eyes rolling, jabbed his shrill nose into space and harmony with a carol of his own. Octaves of agony, heaven knows what of ecstasy. That would have hurried an owl to its nest, a ghoul to its moving picture show. Wow, wow, wow! Caroled beautiful lovely. Wow, wow, wow! As Flame's hands dropped from the piano, the unmistakable creak of red wheels sounded on the frozen driveway just outside. No one but Bertrand the lay reader drove a buggy with red wheels. To the infinite scandalization of the parish, no one but Bertrand the lay reader drove a buggy with red wheels. Fleet steps sounded suddenly on the path. Startled fists beat furiously on the door. What is it? What is it? shouted a familiar voice. Whatever in the world is happening? Is it murder? Let me in! Let me in! Still, hissed Flame through a crack in the door. It's nothing but a party. Don't you know a party when you hear it? For an instant only, blank silence greeted her confidence. Then Bertrand the lay reader relaxed in an indisputably genuine gasp of astonishment. Why is that you, Miss Flame? He gasped. Why, I thought it was a murder! Whatever in the world are you doing here? I'm having a party, hissed Flame through the keyhole. A party? Stammered the lay reader. Open the door! No, I can't, said Flame. Why not? Demanded the lay reader. Helplessly, in the darkness of the vestibule, Flame looked up and down and sideways, but met always in every direction with the memory of her promise. I just can't, she admitted a bit weakly. It wouldn't be convenient. I've got trouble with my eyes. Trouble with your eyes? Questioned the lay reader. I didn't go away with my father and mother, replied Flame. No, so I notice, observed the lay reader. Please open the door. Why? Parried Flame. I've been looking for you everywhere, urged the lay reader. At the senior warden's, at all the vestrymen's houses, even at the sexton's. I knew you didn't go away. The garage man told me there were only two. I thought surely I'd find you at your own house, but I found only sled tracks. That was me, mumbled Flame. And then I heard those awful screams, shuddered the lay reader. That was a carol, said Flame. A carol? Scoffed the lay reader. Open the door. Well, just a crack, conceded Flame. It was astonishing. How a man as broad-shouldered as the lay reader could pass so easily through a crack. Conscience-stricken, Flame fled before him with her elbow crooked across her forehead. Oh, my eyes, she cried. Well, really, puzzled the lay reader, though I claim, of course, to be ordinarily bright. I had never suspected myself of being actually dazzling. Oh, you're not bright at all, protested Flame. It's just my promise. I promised Mother not to see you. Not to see me? Questioned the lay reader. It was astonishing how, almost instantaneously, a man as purely theoretical as the lay reader was supposed to be, thought of a perfectly practical solution to the difficulty. Why, we might tie my big handkerchief across your eyes, he suggested, just till we get this mystery straightened out. Surely there's nothing more or less than just plain righteousness in that. What a splendid idea, capitulated Flame. But, of course, if I'm absolutely blindfolded, she wavered for a second only, you'll have to lead me by the hand. I could do that, admitted the lay reader. With the big white handkerchief once tied firmly across her eyes, Flame's last scruple vanished. Well, you see, she began quite precipitously, I did think it would be such fun to have a party. A party all my own, I mean. A party just exactly as I wanted it. No parish in it at all, or good works, or anything, just fun. As long as Mother and Father had to go away, even though through the blinding bandage, the young eyes seemed to lift in a half-wistful sort of appeal. You see, there's some sort of property involved, she confided quite impulsively. Uncle Wally's making a new will. There's a corn barn and a private chapel and a collection of these Chinese lanterns and a piebald pony principally under dispute. Mother, of course, thinks we ought to have the corn barn, but Father can't decide between the Chinese lanterns and the private chapel, personally. She sighed. Personally, I'm hoping for the piebald pony. Yes, but this party? Brought in the lay reader. Oh, yes, the party, quickened Flame. Why have it in a deserted house? Questioned the lay reader with some incisiveness. Even with her eyes closely bandaged, Flame could see how perfectly clear that the lay reader was really quite troubled. "Oh, but you see, it isn't exactly a deserted house," she explained. "Who lives here?" demanded the lay reader. "I don't know exactly," admitted Flame, "but the butler is a friend of mine, and..." The butler is a friend of yours?" gasped the lay reader. Already, if Flame could only have seen it, his head was cocked with sudden intentness toward the parlor door. "There is certainly something very strange about all this," he whispered a bit hectically. "I could almost have sworn that I heard a faint scuffle, the horrid sound of a person strangling." "Strangling?" giggled Flame. "Oh, that is just the sound of Miss Flora's girlish glee. If she'd only be content to chew the corner of the piano cover, but she insists on inhaling it too." "Miss Flora," gasped the lay reader. "Is this a madhouse?" "Miss Flora is a dog," confided Flame a bit coolly. I neglected, it seems, to say that this is a dog party that I'm having." "Dogs?" winced the lay reader. "Will they bite?" "Only if you don't trust them," confided Flame. "But it's so hard to trust a dog that will bite you if you don't trust him," frowned the lay reader. "It makes such a sort of a vicious cycle, as it were." A vicious circle? Circe?" mused Flame, a bit absent-mindedly. No, I don't think it's nice at all to call Miss Flora a vicious Circe." But it was Flame's turn now to wince back a little. I hate people who hate dogs," she cried out quite abruptly. I don't hate them," lied the lay reader like a gentleman. "It's only that... You see, a dog bit me once," he confided with significant emphasis. "I bit a dentist once," mused Flame without any emphasis at all. But I say, Miss Flame," deprecated the lay reader, "that's different. When a dog bites you, there's always more or less question whether he was mad or not." "There doesn't seem to have been any question at all," mused Flame, "that you were mad. Did you have your head sent off to be investigated or anything?" "Oh, I say, Miss Flame," implored the lay reader, "I tell you, I like dogs, good dogs. I assure you, I'm very much interested in this dog party of yours. Such a quaint idea. So, if I could be of any possible assistance," he implored. "Maybe you could be," relaxed Flame ever so faintly. "But if you're really coming to my party," she stiffened again, "you've got to behave yourself like my party." "Why, of course I'll behave like your party," laughed the lay reader. "There is a problem," admitted Flame. 5 problems, to be perfectly accurate. 4 dogs, and a cat in the woodshed." "And a cat in the woodshed?" echoed the lay reader quite idiotically. "The table is set," affirmed Flame. "The place is all ready. But I don't know how to get the dogs into their chairs. They run around so. They yelp, they jump. They haven't had a mouthful to eat, you see, since last night this time. And when they want to see the turkey, I'm afraid they'll stampede it." "Turkey?" quizzed the lay reader, who had dined that day on corned beef. "Oh, of course. Mush was what they were intended to have," admitted Flame. "Piles and piles of mush. Extra piles and piles of mush, I should judge, because it was Christmas Day. Don't you think mush does seem a bit dull?" she questioned appealingly. "For Christmas Day? Oh, I did think a turkey would taste so good." "It certainly would," conceded the lay reader. "So, if you'd help me," wheedled Flame, "it would be well worth staying blindfolded for, of course, I shall have to stay blindfolded, but I can see a little of the floor," she admitted. "Though I couldn't, of course, break my promise to my mother by seeing you. No. Certainly not, admitted the lay reader. Otherwise, murmured Flame with a faint gesture towards the door. I will help you, said the lay reader. Where's your hand? Fumbled Flame. Here, attested the lay reader. Lead us to the dogs, commanded Flame. Now, the captain of a ship feels genuinely obligated, it would seem, to go down with his ship if tragic circumstances so insist. But he never, so far as I've ever heard, felt the slightest obligation whatsoever to go down with another captain's ship. To be martyred, in short, for any job not distinctly his own. So, Bertrand Lorello, who, for the cause he served, wouldn't have hesitated an instant, probably, to be torn by Hindu lions, devoured by South Sea cannibals, fallen upon by a chapel spire, trampled to death even at a church rummage sale, saw no conceivable reason at the moment for being eaten by dogs at a purely social function. Even groping through a balsam-scented darkness with one hand clasping the frilly fingers of a lovely young girl, this distaste did not altogether leave him. This mush you speak of, he questioned quite abruptly, with the dogs as nervous as you say, so unfortunately liable to stampede? Don't you think that perhaps a little mush served first, a good deal of mush, I would say, served first, might act as a sort of anesthetic? Somewhere in the past, I am almost sure I have read that mush in sufficient quantities, you understand, is really quite an anesthetic. Very palpably, in the darkness, he heard a single throaty swallow. Lead us to the mush, said Flame. In another instant, the doorknob turned in his hand, and the cheerful kitchen lamplight, glitter of tinsel, flare of red ribbons, savor of foods, smoked sharply on him. Oh, I say, how jolly! Cried the lay reader. Don't let me bump into anything, begged the blindfolded Flame, still holding tight to his hand. Oh, I say, Miss Flame, kindled the entranced lay reader, it's you that look the jolliest, all in white that way. I've never seen you wear that to church, have I? This is a pinafore, confided Flame coolly, a bungalow apron, the fashion papers call it. No, you've never seen me wear this to church. Oh, said the lay reader. Oh no, this man is just, he is well and beyond smitten, but he's also terrified of dogs. So he's trying to find a way to have the best of both worlds. And being a young man, he's about as dim as a snuffed candle. So we're seeing all the very worst of things coming about here. It does seem that Flame is either mutually attracted to the lay reader here, or she's just equally dim. Could be a little bit of both, honestly. All right. Get the mush, said Flame. The what? Asked the lay reader. Okay, this is getting silly. It's on the table by the window, gestured Flame. Please set all 4 dishes on the floor. Each dish, of course, in a separate corner, ordered Flame. There is a reason. And then open the parlor door. Open the parlor door? Questioned the lay reader. It was no mere grammatical form of speech, but a real query in the lay reader's mind. Well, maybe I'd better, conceded Flame. Lead me to it. Roused into frenzy by the sound of a stranger's step, the stranger's voice, the 4 dogs fumed and seethed on the other side of the panel. The red setter sucked at the air of the door. Roared the big wolfhound. Slam, bang, slash! Slapped the Dalmatian's crisp weight. sang the bulldog. "Hush, hush, dogs," implored Flame. "This is Father's lay reader." "Your lay reader," contradicted the young man gallantly. It was pretty gallant of him, wasn't it? Considering everything. I swear to God. In another instant, 4 shapes with teeth in them came hurtling through. If Flame had never in her life admired the lay reader, she certainly would have admired him now for the sheer, cold-blooded foresight which had presaged the inevitable reaction of the dogs upon the mush and the mush upon the dogs. With a single sniff at his heels, a prod of paws in his stomach, the onslaught swerved and passed. Guzzlingly from 4 separate corners of the room issued sounds of joy and fulfillment. With an impulse quite surprising even to herself, Flame thrust both hands into the lay reader's clasp. "You are nice, aren't you?" she quickened. In an instant of weakness, one hand crept up to the blinding bandage and recovered its honor, as instantly. "Oh, I do wish I could see you," sighed Flame. "You're so good-looking. Even Mother thinks you're so good-looking. Though she does get awfully worked up, of course, about your amorous eyes." "Does your Mother think I've got amorous eyes?" asked the lay reader a bit tersely. Behind his spectacles, as he spoke, the orbs in question softened and glowed like some rare exotic bloom under glass. "Does your mother think I've got amorous eyes?" "Oh, yes," said Flame. "And your father?" drawled the lay reader. "Why, Father says, of course you've got amorous eyes," confided Flame with the faintest possible tinge of surprise at even being asked such a question. "That's the funny thing about Father and Mother," chuckled Flame. "They're always saying the same thing and meaning something entirely different by it. Why, when Mother says, with her mouth all pursed up, 'I have every reason to believe Mr. Lorello is engaged to the daughter of the rector in his former parish,' Father just put back his head and howls and said, 'Why, of course Mr. Lorello is engaged to the daughter of the rector in his former parish. All lay readers.'" In the sudden hush that ensued, a faint sense of uneasiness flickered through Flame's shoulders. "Is it that you have hushed, or the dogs?" she asked. "The dogs," said the lay reader. Very cautiously, absolutely honorably, Flame turned her back to the lay reader and lifted the bandage just far enough to prove the lay reader's assertion. Bulging with mush, the 4 dogs lay at rest on rounding sides with limp legs straggling, or crouched like lions' heads on paws, with limpid eyes blinking before yawny mouths. "Oh," crooned Flame, "how sweet! Only, of course, with what's to follow," she regretted thriftily. "It's an awful waste of mush. Excelsior warmed in the oven would have served just as well." At the threat of a shadow across her eyeball, she jerked the bandage back into place. "Now, Mr. Lorello," she just suggested blithely, "if you'll get the Bibles." "Bibles?" stiffened the lay reader. "Bibles? Why, really, Miss Flame, I couldn't countenance any sort of mock service, even just for quaintness, even for Christmas quaintness." "A mock service?" puzzled Flame. "Bibles? Oh, I don't want you to preach out of them," she hastened perfectly amiably to explain. "All I want them for is to plump up the chairs. The seats are too low for the dogs. Oh, I suppose dictionaries would do," she compromised reluctantly. "Only dictionaries are always so scarce." Obediently, the lay reader raked the parlor bookcases for plump-upable books. With real dexterity, he built chemistries on sermons and ancient poems on cookbooks till the desired heights were reached. For a single minute more, Flame took another peep at the table. "Set a chair for yourself directly opposite me," she ordered. For sheer hilarious satisfaction, her feet began to dance with her hands to clap. "And whenever I really feel obliged to look," she sparkled, "you'll just have to leave the table. That's all. And now," appraisingly, her muffled eye swept the shining vista. "Perfect!" she triumphed. "Perfect!" Then, quite abruptly, the eager mouth wilted. Why, Why, I've forgotten the carving knife and fork, she cried out in real distress. How stupid of me! Arduously, but without avail, she searched through all the drawers and cupboards of the rattle-pane kitchen. A single alternative occurred to her. You'll have to go over to my house and get them, Mr. Lorello, she said. Were you ever in my kitchen? Or my pantry? No, admitted the lay reader. Well, you'll have to climb in through the window. Some way, worried Flame. I've mislaid my key somewhere here among all these dishes and boxes. And the pantry, she explained very explicitly, is the third door on the right as you enter. You'll see a chest of drawers. Open the second of them. Or maybe you'd better look through all of them. Only, please, please hurry. Imploringly, the little head lifted. If I hurry enough, said the lay reader quite impulsively, may I have a kiss when I get back? A kiss? Hooted Flame. In the curve of her cheek, a dimple opened suddenly. Well, maybe, said Flame. As though the word were wings, the lay reader snatched his hat and sped out into the night. It was astonishing how all the warm, housey air seemed to rush out with him, and all the shivery frost rush back. A little bit listlessly, Flame dragged down the bandage from her eyes. It must be the creaks on the stairs that make it so awfully lonely all of a sudden, argued Flame. It must be because the dogs snore so. No mere man could make it so empty. With a precipitous nudge of the memory, she dashed to the door and helloed to the fast-retreating figure. Oh, Bertrand! Bertrand! She called. I got sort of mixed up. It's the second door on the left. And if you don't find him there, you better go up to Mother's room and turn out the silver chest. Hurry! Rallying back to the bright Christmas kitchen for the real business at hand, an accusing blush rose to the young spot where the dimple had been. Oh, shucks, parried Flame. I kissed a bishop before I was 5. What's a lay reader? As one humanely willing to condone the future as well as the past, she rolled up her white sleeves without further introspection and dragged out from the protecting shadow of the sink the humpiest box, which had so excited her emotions at home in an earlier hour of the day. Cracklingly under her eager fingers, the clumsy cover slid off, exposing once more to her enraptured gaze the gay-colored muslin paper of animal masks leering fatuously up at her. Only, with her hand across her mouth, did she keep from crying out. Very swiftly, her glance traveled from the grinning muslin faces before her to the solemn fur faces on the other side of the room. The hand across her mouth tightened. Why, it's something like creation, she giggled. This having to decide which face to give to which animal. As expeditiously as possible, she made her selection. Poor Miss Flora must be so tired of being so plain, she thought. I'll give her the first choice of everything. Something really lovely. It can't help resting her. With this kind idea in mind, she selected for Miss Flora a canary's face, softly yellow, bland as treacle, its swelling, tender muslin throat fairly reeking with the suggestion of innocent song. No one gazing upon such ornithological purity would ever speak a harsh word again, even to a sparrow. Nudging Miss Flora cautiously from her sonorous nap, Flame beguiled her with half a donut to her appointed chair, boosted her still cautiously to her pinnacle of books, and with a various swift adjustments of fasteners, knottings, and tie strings, an extra breathing hole jabbed through the beak, slipped the canary's beautiful blonde countenance over Miss Flora's frankly grizzled mug. For a single, terrifying instant, Miss Flora's crinkled sides tightened. A snarl like ripped silk slipped through her straining lungs. Then, once convinced that the mask was not a gas box, she accepted the liberty with reasonable sang-froid, and sat blinking beadily out through the canary's yellow-rimmed eye sockets with frank curiosity towards such proceedings as were about to follow. It was easy to see she was accustomed to sitting in chairs. For the wolfhound, Flame chose a giraffe's head, certain anatomical similarities seemed to make the choice wise. With a long, vividly striped stockinette neck wrinkling like mousquetaire glove, with his neat, small head that so closely fitted his own neat, small head, the tweaked, interrogative ears, beautiful, lovely, the wolfhound reared up majestically in his own chair. He also, once convinced that the mask was not a gas box, resigned himself to the inevitable, and, corporeally independent of such vain props as chemistries or sermons, lolled his fine head against the mahogany chairback. To Blunderblot, the trim Dalmatian, Flame assigned the parrot's head, arrogantly beaked, gorgeously variegated, and altogether querulous. For Lopsy, the crafty setter, she selected a white rabbit's artless, pink-eared visage. Yet, out of the whole box of masks, it had been the Bengal tiger's fiercely bewhiskered visage that had fascinated Flame the most. Regretfully, from its more or less nondescript companions, she picked up the Bengal tiger now and pulled at its real bristle whiskers. In one of the chairs, a dog stirred quite irrelevantly. Cocking her own head towards the woodshed, Flame could not be perfectly sure whether she heard a twinge of cat or a twinge of conscience. The unflinching glare of the Bengal tiger only served to increase her self-reproach. After all, reasoned Flame, it would be easy enough to set another place, and pile a few extra books. I'm almost sure I saw a black plush bag in the parlor. If the cat could be put in something like a black plush bag, something perfectly enveloping like that, so that not a single line of its figure could be observed, and it had a new head given it, a perfectly sufficient head, like a Bengal tiger's, I see no reason why. In 5 minutes, the deed was accomplished. Its lovely, sinuous figure reduced to the stolid contour of a black plush workbag. Its small, uneasy head thrust into the roomy muslin cranium of the Bengal tiger, the astonished cat found herself slumping soggily on a great teetering pile of books, staring down as best she might through the Bengal tiger's ear at the weirdest assemblage of animals which any domestic cat of her acquaintance had ever been forced to contemplate. Coincidental with the appearance of the cat, a faint thrill passed through the rest of the company. Nothing very much, no more, no less indeed, than passes through any company at the introduction of a purely extraneous matter. From the empty plate which she had commandeered as a temporary pillow, the yellow canary lifted an interrogative beak. That was all. At Flame's left, the white-haired rabbit emitted an incongruous bark, scarcely worth recording. Across the table, the giraffe thumped a white, plumy tail. Thoughtfully, the parrot's hooked nose slanted slightly to one side. "Oh, I wish Bertrand would come," fretted Flame. "Maybe this time he'll notice my Christmas crossing sign." She chuckled with sudden triumph. Talk about surprises! Very diplomatically, as she spoke, she broke another donut in two and drew all the dog's attention to herself. Almost hysterical with amusement, she surveyed the scene before her. "Well, at least we can have grace before the preacher comes," she laughed. A step on the gravel walk startled her suddenly. In a flash, she jerked down the blindfolding handkerchief across her eyes again. And folding her hands and the donut before her, she burst softly into paraphrase. "Now we sit us down to eat, thrice our share of flesh and sweet. If we should burst before we're through, oh, what in dogdom shall we do?" Thus it was that the master of the house, returning unexpectedly to his unfamiliar domicile, stumbled upon a scene that might have shaken the reason of a less sober young man. Startled first by the unwanted illumination from his kitchen windows, and second by the unprecedented aroma of fir balsam that greeted him, even though through the keyhole of his new front door. His feelings may well be imagined when, groping through the dingy hall, he first beheld the gallows-like structure reared in the kitchen doorway. That being the railroad sign. "My God!" he ejaculated. "Barrett is getting ready to hang himself! Gone mad, probably! Or something." Curdled with horror, he forced himself to the object, only to note with convulsive relief, but increasing bewilderment, the cheerful phrasing and ultimate intent of the structure itself. "Christmas crossing," he repeated blankly. "Look out for surprises? Shop, cook, glisten?" With his hand across his eyes, he reeled back slightly against the wall. It is I that have gone mad, he gasped. A little uncertain whether he was afraid of what he was about to see, or whether what he was about to see ought to be afraid of him, he craned his neck as best he could round the corner of the huge buffet that blocked the kitchen vista. A fresh bewilderment met his eyes. Where he had once seen cobwebs flapping gaily across the chimney breast loomed now the gay-worsted recommendation that dogs, especially, should be considered in the Christmas season. Throwing all caution aside, he passed the buffet and plunged into the kitchen. "Oh, do hurry!" cried an eager young voice. "I thought my hair would be white before you came." Like a man paralyzed, he stopped short in his tracks to stare at the scene before him. The long, bright table, the absolutely formal food, a blindfolded girl. A perfectly strange blindfolded girl, with her dark hair 40 years the side of white, begging him to hurry. A black velvet bag surmounted by a tiger's head stirring strangely in a chair piled high with books. Seated next to the black velvet bag, a canary, as big as a turkey gobbler, a giraffe stepping suddenly forward with dog paws thrust into his soup plate, a white rabbit heavily wreathed in holly rousing cautiously from his cushions, a parrot with a twitching black and white short-haired tail, an empty chair facing the girl, an empty chair facing the girl. If this is madness, thought Delcote quite precipitously, at least I am the master of the asylum. In another instant, with a prodigious stride, he slipped into the vacant seat. "So sorry to have kept you waiting," he murmured. At the first sound of that unfamiliar voice, Flame yanked the handkerchief from her eyes, took one blank glance at the stranger, and burst forth into a muffled but altogether blood-curdling scream. Said that scream. As though waiting only for that one signal to break the spell of their enchantment, the canary leaped upward and grabbed the Bengal tiger by its muslin nose. The white rabbit sprang to point on the cooling turkey, and the red and green parrot fell to the floor in a desperate effort to settle once and for all with the black spot that itched so impulsively on his left shoulder. For a moment only, in comparative quiet, the concerned struggled with the concerned. Then, true to all dog psychology, absolutely indisputable, absolutely unalterable, the non-concerned leaped in upon the non-concerned, half on his guard, but wholly on his itch. The jostled parrot shot like a catapult across the floor, lost to all sense of honor or table manners the benign-faced giraffe, with his benign face still towering blandly in the air, burst through his own neck with a most curious anatomical effect, locked his teeth in the parrot's grey throat, and rolled with him under the table in mortal combat. Round and round the room spun the yellow canary in the black plush bag. Retreating as best she could from her muslin nose, the Bengal tiger, or rather that which was within the Bengal tiger, waged her war for freedom. Ripping like a chicken through its shell, she succeeded at last in hatching one front paw and one hind paw into action. Wallowing, stumbling, rolling, yowling, she humped from mantelpiece to chair top, then from box to table. Loyally, the rabbit-eared setter took up the chase. Mauled in the scuffle, he ran with his meek face upside down. Lost to all reason, defiant of all morale, he proceeded to flush the game. Dishpans clattered, stools tipped over, pictures banged on the walls. From her terrorized perch on the back of her chair, Flame watched the fracas with dilated eyes. Hunched in the hug of his own arms, the stranger sat rocking himself to and fro in uncontrollable choking mirth. A ribald mirth was what Flame called it. "Stop!" she begged. "Stop it! Somebody stop it!" It was not until the black plush bag at bay had ripped a red streak down Miss Flora's avid nose that the stranger rose to interfere. Very definitely, then. With quick deeds, incisive words, he separated the immediate combatants, and ordered the other dogs into submission. "Here, you demon dreadful!" he had addressed the white wolfhound. "Drop that, Orion!" he shouted to the Irish setter. "Cut it out, John!" he thundered at the coach dog. "Their names are Beautiful Lovely," cried Flame, "and Lopsy, and Blunderblot." With his hand on the wolfhound's collar, the stranger stopped and stared up with frank astonishment, not to say resentment, at the girl's interference. "Their names are... what?" he said. Something in the special intonation of the question infuriated Flame. Maybe she thought his mouth scornful, his narrowing eyes. Goodness knows what she thought of his suddenly narrowing eyes. In an instant, she had jumped from her retreat to the floor. "Who are you, anyway?" she demanded. "How dare you come here like this, butting into my party and spoiling my discipline with the dogs? Who are you, I say?" With Demon Direful, alias Beautiful Lovely, tugging wildly at his restraint, the stranger's scornful mouth turned precipitously up instead of down. "Who am I?" he said. "Why, no one special at all, except just the master of the house." "What?" gasped Flame. "Earl Delcote," bowed the stranger. With a little hand that trembled perfectly palpably, Flame reached back to the arm of the big carved chair for support. Why, but Mr. Delcote is an old man," she gasped. "I'm almost sure he's an old man." The smile on Delcote's mouth spread suddenly to his eyes. "Not yet, thank God," he bowed. With a panic-stricken glance at doors, windows, cracks, the chimney pipe itself, Flame sank limply down in her seat again and gestured towards the empty place opposite her. Have a chair," she stammered. Great tears welled suddenly to her eyes. "Oh, I know I oughtn't to be here," she struggled. "It's perfectly awful. I haven't the slightest right. Not the slightest. It's the cheekiest thing that any girl in the world ever did. But your butler said, and he so did want to go away, and I did so love your dogs. And I did so want to make one Christmas in the world just exactly the way I wanted it. And mother and father will be crazy, and... Without a single glance at anything except herself, the master of the house slipped back into his chair. "Have a heart," he said. Flame did not accept the suggestion. With a very severe frown and downcast eyes, she sat staring at the table. It seemed a very cheerless table suddenly, with all the dogs in various stages of disheveled finery grouped blatantly around their master's chair. I can at least have my cat, she thought. My faithful cat." In another instant, she had slipped from the table, extracted poor Puss from a clutter of pans in the back of a cupboard, stripped the last shred of masquerade from her outraged form, and brought her back growling and bristling to perch on one arm of the high-back chair. "There," said Flame. Glancing up from this innocent triumph, she encountered the eyes of the master of the house fixed speculatively on the big turkey. "I'm afraid everything is very cold," she confided with distinctly formal regret. "Not for anything," laughed Delcote quite suddenly, "would I have kept you waiting if I had only known." 2 spots of color glowed hotly in the girl's cheeks. It was not for you I was waiting," she said coldly. "No," teased Delcote. "You astonish me. For whom, then? Some incredible wight who, worse than late, isn't going to show up at all? Heaven sent, I consider myself. How else could so little a girl have managed so big a turkey?" "There isn't any carving knife," whispered Flame. The tears were glistening on her cheek now instead of just in her eyes. A less observing man than Delcote might have thought the tears were really for the carving knife. "What? No carving knife?" he roared imperiously. "And the house guaranteed furnished?" Very furiously, he began to hunt all around the kitchen in the most impossible places. Oh, it's furnished all right," quivered Flame. "It's just chock full of dead things, pressed flowers, and old plush bags, and pressed flowers, and pressed flowers." "Great heavens!" groaned Delcote. "And I came here to forget dead things." Your butler said you'd had misfortunes," murmured Flame. "Misfortunes?" rallied Delcote. "I should think I had. In a single year I've lost health, money, most everything I own in the world, except my man and my dogs." "They're good dogs," testified Flame. "And the doctor sent me here for 6 months," persisted Delcote, "before he'll even hear of my plunging into things again." 6 months is a good long time," said Flame. "If you'd turn the hems, we could make yellow curtains for the parlor in no time at all." "We?" stammered Delcote. Mother, said Flame, it's a long time since any dogs lived in the Rattlepane house. Rattle-brain house? Bridled Delcote. Rattlepane house, corrected Flame. A bit worriedly, Delcote returned to his seat. I shall have to rend the turkey instead of carve it, he said. Rend it. In the midst of rending, a dark frown appeared from between Delcote's eyes. These guests that you were expecting. Oh, stop, cried Flame. Dreadful as I am, I never would have dreamed of inviting guests. This guest, then, frowned Delcote. Was he... Oh, you mean... Bertrand? Flushed Flame. Oh, truly, I didn't invite him. He just butted in. Same as you. Same as I, stammered Delcote. Well, floundered Flame. Well, you know what I mean, and... With peculiar intentiveness, the master of the house fixed his eyes on the knotted white handkerchief which Flame had thrown across the corner of her chair. And this Bertrand person is so dazzling, he questioned, that human eyes may not look safely upon his countenance. Bertrand? Dazzling? Protested Flame. Oh, no, he's really quite dull. It was only... She explained with sudden friendliness. It was only that I had promised Mother not to see him. So, of course, when he butted in, I... Oh, relaxed the master of the house. With a precipitous flippancy of manners which did not conform at all to the somewhat tragic austerity of his face, he snatched up his knife and fork and thumped joyously on the table with the handles of them. And some people talk about a country village being dull in the wintertime, he chuckled, with a dog's masquerade and a robbery at the rectory all happening the same evening. Grabbing her cat in her arms, Flame jerked her hand back from the table. A robbery at the rectory? She gasped. Why, I'm the rectory. I must go home at once. Oh, shucks, shrugged the master of the house. It's all over now, but the people at the railroad station were certainly buzzing about it as I came through. Buzzing about it? Articulated Flame with some difficulty. Expeditiously, the master of the house resumed his rending of the turkey. Are you really from the rectory? He questioned. How amusing. Well, there's nothing really you can do about it now. The constable and his prisoner are already on their way to the county seat, wherever that may be, and a freshly burgled house is rather a creepy place for a young girl to return to all alone. Your parents are away, I believe. Constable? Babbled Flame quite idiotically. Yes, the regular constable was off Christmasing somewhere, it seems, so he put a substitute on his job. A stranger from somewhere. Some substitute that. No mulling over hot toddies on Christmas night for him. He saw the marauder calling in through the rectory window. He saw him fumbling now to the left, now to the right, all through the front hall. He followed him up the stairs to a closet where the silver was evidently kept. He caught the man red-handed, as it were, or rather white-handed, flushed the master of the house for some quite unaccountable reason. To be perfectly accurate, he explained conscientiously, he was caught with a pair of... Delicately, he spelt out the word with a pair of C-O-R-S-E-T-S rolled up in his hand. But inside the roll, it seemed there was a solid silver, very elaborate carving set, which the parish had recently presented. The wretch was just unrolling it. Then, when he was caught... That was Bertrand, said Flame, my father's lay reader. It was the man's turn now to jump to his feet. What? He cried. I sent him for the carving knife, said Flame. What? Repeated the man. Consternation versus hilarity went racing suddenly, like cat and dog combat across his eyes. Yes, said Flame. From the outside door, the sound of furious knocking occurred suddenly. That sounds to me like parents knocking, shivered Flame. It sounds to me like an escaped lay reader, said her host. With a single impulse, they both started for the door. Don't worry, little girl, whispered the young stranger in the dark hall. I'll try not to, quivered Flame. They were both right, it seemed. It was parents and the lay reader. All three breathless, all three excited, all three reproachful. They swept into the warm, balsam-scented Rattlepane house with a gust of frost, a threat of disaster. Flame, scolded her mother. Flame?" implored the lay reader. "What a pretty name," beamed the master of the house. "Pray, be seated, everybody." He gestured graciously to the left and right, shoving one dog expeditiously under the table with his foot, while he yanked another out of a chair with his least gesticulating hand. "This is certainly a very great pleasure, I assure you," he affirmed distinctly to Miss Flamande Nourrice. "Returning quite unexpectedly to my new house this lonely Christmas evening," he explained very definitely to the Reverend Flamande Nourrice. "I can't express to you what it means to me to find the pleasant gathering of neighbors waiting here to welcome me. And when I think of the effort you must have made to get here, Mr. Bertrand," he beamed, "a young man of all your obligations and complications." "Pleasant gathering of neighbors?" questioned Mrs. Nourrice with some emotion. "Oh, I forgot," deprecated the master of the house with real concern. "Your Christmas season is not, of course, as inherently pleasant as one might wish. I was told at the railroad station how you and Mr. Nourrice have been called away by the illness of a relative." "We were called away," confided Miss Nourrice with increasing asperity, "called away at considerable inconvenience by a very sick relative, to receive the present of a piebald pony." "Oh, goody!" quickened Flame, and collapsed again under the weight of her mother's glance. "And then came this terrible telephone message," shuddered the mother. "The implied dishonor of one of your father's most trusted associates." "I was right in the middle of such an interesting book," deplored her father, "and Uncle Wally wouldn't lend it. So we borrowed Uncle Wally's new automobile and started right for home," explained her mother. "It was at the junction that we made connections with the constable and his prisoner." "His victim?" intercepted the lay reader coldly. At this interception, everybody turned suddenly and looked at the lay reader. His mouth was twisted very slightly to one side. It gave him a rather unpleasant snarling expression. If this expression had been vocal instead of muscular, it would have shocked his hearers. "Your father had to go on board the train and identify him," persisted Flame's mother. "It was very distressing. The constable was most unwilling to release him. Your father had to use every kind of argument." "Every kind," mused her father. "He doesn't even deny being in the house," continued her mother. "Being in my closet, being caught with a silver carving knife and fork in his hand," intercepted the lay reader hastily. "Yet all the time he persists," frowned Flame's mother, "that there is someone in the world who can give a perfectly good explanation, if only—" He wouldn't even say he or she, but it. If only it would. Something in the stricken expression of her daughter's face brought a sudden flicker of suspicion to the mother's eyes. "You don't know anything about this, do you, Flame?" she demanded. "Is it remotely possible that after your promise to me, your sacred promise to me—" The whole structure of the home, of mutual confidence, of all the future itself, crackled and toppled in her voice. To the lay reader's face, and right through the lay reader's face, to the face of the master of the house, Flame's glance went homing with an unaccountable impulse. With one elbow leaning casually on the mantelpiece, his narrowed eyes faintly inscrutable, faintly smiling, it seemed suddenly to the master of the house that he had been waiting all his discouraged years for just that glance. His heart gave the queerest jump. Flame's face turned suddenly very pink. Like a person in a dream, she turned back to her mother. There was a smile on her face, but even the smile was the smile of a dreaming person. "No, Mother," she said, "I haven't seen Bertrand today." "Why, you're looking at him right now!" protested her exasperated mother. With a gentle murmur of dissent, Flame's father stepped forward and laid his arm across the young girl's shoulder. "She may be looking at him," he said, "but I'm almost perfectly sure that she doesn't see him." "Why, whatever in the world do you mean?" demanded his wife. "Whatever in the world does anybody mean? If there was only another woman here, a mature, sane woman, With a flare of accusation, she turned from Flame to the master of the house. "This Miss Flora that my daughter spoke of, where is she? I insist on seeing her. Please summon her instantly. Crossing genially to the table, the master of the house reached down and dragged out the bulldog by the brindled scruff of her neck. The scratch on her nose was still bleeding slightly, and one eye was closed. This is Miss Flora, he said. Indignantly, Flame's mother glanced at the dog, and then from her daughter's face to the face of the young man again. And you call that a lady? She demanded. Not technically, admitted the young man. For an instant, a perfectly tense silence reigned. Then, from under a shadowy basket, the cat crept out, shining, sinuous, with extended paw, and began to pat a sprig of holly cautiously along the floor. Yielding to the reaction, Flame bent down suddenly and, hugging the wolfhound's head to her breast, buried her face in the soft, sweet shagginess. Not sanitary, mother, she protested. Why, they're as sanitary as violets. As though dreaming he were late to church and had forgotten his vestments, Flame's father reached out nervously and draped a great string of ground pine stole-like about his neck. We all, broke in the master of the house quite irrelevantly, seem to have experienced a slight twinge of irritability in the past few minutes. Hunger, I've no doubt. So, suppose we all sit down together to this sumptuous, if somewhat chilled, repast. After the soup, certainly. Even after the very cold soup, all explanations, I'm sure, will be cheerfully and satisfactorily exchanged. Miss Flame, I know, has a most amusing story to tell, and... Oh, yes, rallied Flame, and it's almost all about being blindfolded and sending poor Mr. Lorillo. So, if by chance, Mr. Bertrand, interrupted the master of the house a bit abruptly, you happen to have the carving knife and fork still on your person, I thought I saw a white string hanging... I have! Said the lay reader with his first real grin. With great formality, the master of the house drew back a chair and bowed Flame's mother to it. Then suddenly the red setter lifted his sensitive nose in the air, and the spotted Dalmatian bristled faintly across the ridge of his back. Through the whole room, it seemed, swept a curious cottony sense of something about to happen. Was it that a sound hushed? Or that a hush decided suddenly to be a sound? With a little sharp catch of her breath, Flame dashed to the window and swung the sash upward. Where once had breathed the drab, dusty smell of frozen grass and mud quickened suddenly a curious metallic dampness, like the smell of new pennies. Mr. Delcourt, she called. In an instant, his slender form silhouetted darkly with hers in the open window, against the eternal mystery and majesty of a Christmas night. And then the snow came. The end. Okay, so that one was a ride. That is for certain. So, between the bungling and the ups and downs that we had throughout, it all seems to mostly have worked out. Lots of misunderstandings, lots of accidents, lots of stumbling upons, and lots of, frankly, suspicious behaviors. But I stand by my opening line with this one. It feels like a Disney, like an old Disney story. And, yeah, that's alright. It's in the season. It feels just fun enough. All good things, right? Exactly. If Disney made a Christmas rom-com, that would be about perfect. Alright, so let me see. We've got a fair bit of time, but I have something that might be prepped, but we'll see how long this next one might be. Oh no, we can't read this one. That's not right at all. That's a different name for a story that I am familiar with and have saved. So we will not be doing this one this afternoon, that is for certain. But there are good images in this next one. So little did I know that The Night Before Christmas is alternatively named A Visit from St. Nicholas. So I've apparently already downloaded our thing for the last reading of the season. So be it. Alright, so as we've been getting at in some of our posts, we're having a bit of a hard time finding things to read. There are lots of options, but a lot of them are short little silly stories like this. We've got things that may or may not fill time and will just, you know, be a day's reading or less, as the case may be. And that's not bad. It's just difficult to fill a month. So, I think we're probably going to end early tonight. We read through our normal break time because we were getting close to the end on that one. And I've got pizza getting cold. So, we'll talk for a little bit, but I think we won't read anything else tonight. But we do need to come up with something to read for tomorrow and Sunday, and to get through next week. Because, as I'd alluded to, we are ready for the Tuesday after next. But beyond that, it's a little sparse. So there are some short story collections that I can pull from, and I am just still pretty reasonably flabbergasted at how hard it is to find an actual full book length that has the proper Christmassy / winter holiday vibes. So we'll see what we can find. There may be something. If I remember right, it's not in the it's not in the public domain yet. But like, if we had access to things like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that all happens around a Christmas, so that could work. Hell, there's Santa in that one. But sadly, it is not for a while yet. We're in that awkward point in time where a lot of these, like, what would be considered modern classics are almost in the public domain. We're just a few years off of Tolkien falling public domain. We're a few years off of Narnia falling into public domain. It's so very close, but that is still a matter of years, which is frustrating all the same. 100 years is a long time to wait. Yeah! There's so much public domain Christmas music. There's so much public short stories and poems and things that have been around forever, but like for actual like meaty things, it's all like sized to be perfectly for sitting down in front of the fire and reading an evening before bed. Not really to have a solid book about it, which is I get it, it's understandable. But after having such an easy time of it in Halloween season, I guess we just got spoiled. We'll definitely, I think next year we'll limit ourselves to the week before Christmas or so, before doing a special. You know, I was looking at that one, I wasn't sure if it was, because that was on my short list. Let me see. Let's see, the Nuts and Nutcrackers, I don't believe that's it, no. No, that is not it. Yeah, I do not believe that the Nutcracker is in public domain. Oh, well, I guess it is. This is the Nutcracker and the Mouse King, the book. The trick will be to find it. Yeah. I don't think it is in... Yeah, it's not actually in Gutenberg, which is a bit of a travesty. But let's see if I can find it. Maybe it doesn't like that. Look at it. No, it just doesn't like it. But... It's by E.T.A. Hoffman? Let's see if I can search by the author. Okay, yeah, so it Ah, okay. So I wonder if there is a translation on here. Because this is rather obviously a German fairy tale. I think we're just in that awkward point where I don't know if a translation is in the public domain. That may be the problem. But really, it should be. Yeah, we did the one that was Christmassy. And I looked up, there's a Hercule Poirot Christmas story, but that one hasn't fallen into the public domain yet. Because Dame Christie was writing, like her early works, public domain. Later works, not. So it's like, it all depends on where it lands in her career. Okay, this is a PDF version of the Nutcracker. The translation was published in 2007, but the source is sufficiently old that... Yeah, alright, let's see. How long is this? It's the introduction... This is quite a long introduction. It might be... Oh, okay. Is it the story? No, no. There we go. Okay. Well, we may be able to do the Nutcracker then, if I just can find a way to conveniently read it. Let's plan for that. We'll see if we can run with that tomorrow and Sunday. And really, from the length of this, because this is closer to a full-length read, if I recall. As I'm looking through or scrolling through. Actually, I'm not even sure how long. It seems reasonably long. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and go with this. Let's plan for this. And we'll see how long and how much of the remaining time it fills. At the very least, I expect this will fill tomorrow and Sunday. And we will, hopefully, judging by its length, it might take us to next Tuesday as well. So we'll have just a little bit of time left over, probably next weekend. And if we have to fill that with short stories and compilations, I can think of worse things. There are certainly worse things to do than read some wintry poems as the holiday approaches. It'll be less than a week out by that point, so it'll be particularly timely. Alright, so we've got our game plan aligned, we've got through our story and the interesting presentation of Peace on Earth, Goodwill to Dogs. It was a fun little read. Not what I usually would have chosen, not particularly something that I would think of as a holiday classic, but it was fun. So, I think we're about at a good spot to wrap up a little early tonight. I can go grab some dinner that is certainly cold by now, and we can reconvene tomorrow when we'll pick up with The Nutcracker and the Mouse King by, who was that? By E.T.A. Hoffman. Until then, let's go ahead and call it an evening. As always, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful night. We'll see you tomorrow for our new book as we continue our holiday reading series. Have a good night. Thank you again. Bye now.